What is up, everybody? We are back with another Analytics Friday. Listen, y'all, I am not going to fabricate this. It's been a little bit of a rough week. I am feeling a bit tired today. So bear with me. I might not be as wild and crazy as usual, but hopefully we can still have a good time here. And yeah, so today we are going to be talking about, um, sorry, I'm trying to get this all set up so I can hear it or see it. Here we are. Okay, we're going to be talking about Google Analytics 4 versus Universal Analytics. Get this question a lot. I'm sure most of you have seen that I have been on a Google Analytics 4 rampage trying to get everybody to at least get it set up. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about what some of the differences are, when to use each platform, and how to get, how to get it all going, right? So I'm actually going to get this set up on my phone. Reminder, this is brought to you by Marketing Merch Store. So if you haven't checked out Marketing Merch Store, it's kind of been my little pet project, something that I have really been loving, where I just have created some skate slash punk inspired digital marketing shirts and stickers and things of that nature for those of us who had some sort of um, punk stage or emo stage or scene stage, whatever. Anyways, you can go check that out at marketingmerchstore.com. Now, let's get into it. So, the first thing, oh my goodness, y'all, Militia is here. It's been a minute since we've seen Militia. She started a new job at an agency. Militia, congrats, and we are so happy to have you here. All right, perfect. Everybody, let's see some love for Militia. Congrats, Militia. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you our much loved, we're going to look at a much loved platform here of Universal Analytics. We've got a lot of friends jumping in today. We've got Taylor, saw Phil was in here earlier. Thanks everybody for jumping in over on the Twitter and YouTube and all of the beautiful places. So here we go. So this is Universal Analytics, right? This is what we've been using. It's been the standard since about 2012 when they moved everybody to Universal Analytics. Now, if you were working in analytics before that, you probably remember the transition to Universal Analytics. And there's a big transition period when it comes to Google Analytics and mostly just Google changes in general. Turns out they don't really ask for your opinion, nor do they ask for your permission. And what ends up happening is that you are forced, okay, you are forced to go into this new platform at some point. So we can only assume that the same is going to happen with Google Analytics 4. Taylor, thanks for sharing, bud. I appreciate it. So we can only assume that the same is going to happen with Google Analytics 4, that someday we will log on to Google Analytics, and the only platform we will be able to see and make changes to and collect data from, etc., will be Google Analytics 4. Right now, that's not the case, right? We see Universal Analytics when you go to set up a new property. So if we were to come in here to admin, create an account here. Oh, let's not go create account because that's not gonna do what we need it to do. I'm gonna go into my account here real quick. So if I go to create a property, you can see by default, it says, what do you want your Google Analytics 4 property to be called? Now, if you go to advanced options, you are able to still create a Universal Analytics property. My recommendation as of today, this could always change tomorrow. But my recommendation as of today is to go ahead when you are creating new properties, or new accounts even, is to go ahead and create the Google Analytics 4 account, but also go to that advanced setting options and create a universal analytics account. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons that's necessary. But before we get into that, you might be asking, well, why create the Google Analytics 4 account at all? Well, if you go into a new Google Analytics 4 account, it looks something like this, a bunch of goose eggs. Um, you get no data. It's not pulling in your data from Universal Analytics. Mark, thanks for joining over on Twitter. It's not pulling in Universal Analytics data and populating. And it turns out that the reason that is because of the way that they're collecting data and structuring data with Google Analytics 4 is apparently completely different. Krista, who used to work at Google, she said so. So I believe her. So if you want any data at all on that lovely day that comes where Google says you have to use Google Analytics 4, you're going to need to start collecting data. And honestly, the sooner the better, because the more data you'll have to work with. I always tell people collect it before you need it, because the moment you go, oh man, I really need to know X, and you log on and there's goose eggs, that's going to be a real bummer. So we need to avoid that at all costs, and make sure that we're collecting data, even if you're not going to log into Google Analytics 4 every single day, even if you're not going to, you know, yeah, even if you're just not going to use Google Analytics 4, you don't think for now, you need to go ahead and get it set up so that it is collecting that data for the day that it's required, right? Or used. So first recommendation, make sure you're running both Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics concurrently on your website. The reason I say to make sure that you are also running Universal Analytics and collecting data and putting it into Universal Analytics is because there are a lot of downfalls with Google Analytics 4. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure a lot of people they just don't love it. Okay, hold on. Taylor just said, let me pull this over here. Oh, it doesn't pull into here. Well, Taylor over on Twitter just asked if if Universal Analytics data will ever be pulled into Google Analytics 4. And unfortunately, I believe that answer is no. I could be wrong on that. Part of me hopes that I'm wrong about that, but I just don't see that happening. They didn't do that when they made the transition to Universal Analytics. So I'm going to guess that they probably won't do it. Yes, that is whack. You are correct. So yeah, that's quite unfortunate. But so I would definitely recommend making sure that you have Universal Analytics still running though. And there are a few reasons, but the main reason is, especially for my friends in SEO, they have the integration with Search Console in Universal Analytics. In Google Analytics 4, that's not there. They do have an integration right now with AdSense and Google Ads. Pardon me. Pardon me. But not with Google Search Console. So you're kind of missing, that the reports aren't the same, and we're kind of missing some of the reporting, or it's just not as easy to find. I don't really know. In Google Analytics 4 currently than we do in Universal Analytics. And besides, I mean, all of us know that right now the preferred platform is Universal Analytics. And if that's the case, if only having Google Analytics 4 is going to deter you from hopping into Google Analytics when you need information or when it might be beneficial to get information, then, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I would say run both. because you're going to need the data eventually, and because, there are things that Google Analytics 4 just can't do at this time that Universal Analytics can do. Cool? We all feel great about that? Cool. Okay, so let's talk about one of the big differences that I just showed you. So Universal Analytics, there are menus and drop downs for days. So there's a drop down here, there's a drop down here, there's a drop down here, and here, and here, and here, and it just goes on and on and on, right? So we have the main menu in Universal Analytics is real-time analytics. Well, aside from customization, you've got real-time analytics, audience acquisition behavior, and conversions. And then you have the option for distribution down here, or not distribution, attribution, which takes you kind of to like a different looking platform deal. And Google Analytics 4, it's set up different. So, okay, hold please. Does the data in 4 match what's in Universal Analytics for the property views that are the same? Taylor, I believe so. From what I'm seeing, yes. I will say I've found that there's a bit more of a delay with Google Analytics 4. That might just be in my head, but I really think that there is more of a delay with Google Analytics 4. So that is something to keep in mind. But otherwise, I've seen that the numbers are pretty similar for your views. So in Google Analytics 4, we have report snapshot, then we have the real-time acquisition, engagement, monetization, retention, and then we have demographics and tech. So we have life cycle, and then we have user. I think this life cycle is really interesting because it's acquisition, engagement, and monetization. It really follows that traditional idea of a funnel, but also monetization is different from what we see here as conversions, and that's because they are pulling in the AdSense data. So we can see that monetization overview. So we have e-commerce, we have in-app purchases, and we have publisher ads. Because remember, we haven't talked about this yet. I skipped it, but one of the main differences between Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics is that instead of having separate properties for every entity that you have online, you get to create what they call as properties, but you have different data streams or data, they call them data streams that can flow into a singular property. So, if you have an app and a website, both of those will show up in Google Analytics 4 together. Whereas with Universal Analytics, they had to be separate. There was no way to join that information. So we see that monetization here that lives here. But then we also have this kind of secondary report, right? So we have the reports, or not report, menu. We have this kind of secondary menu here, which is reports. And then we have explore, which takes you to explorations, which we'll get into momentarily. We have advertising, which is kind of like the attribution that we see in Universal Analytics. And we have configure, which allows you to configure your events, conversions, audiences, and custom definitions. So Melissa just asked a question. She said, what are your top 3 favorite things about Google Analytics? I'm assuming Google Analytics 4, and the top 3 things you don't love about it. So the 3 things that I love about Google Analytics 4 are how easy it is to set up these events. Let me take that back. How customizable it is. So the events are customizable, all of your reports are customizable, and you can really create what you need without like a developer or anything of that nature, which is really, really awesome and very beneficial for a lot of people. I also love the explorations part of Google Analytics 4, which we'll get into here in a little bit. And then the third thing that I love would just be probably learning it I know that sounds lame, but I just like to learn new things. Oh, I guess okay, fine. The access to machine learning in Google Analytics 4 is really nice. So there's anomaly detection throughout, and you can access that. In explorations, there's also event detection, and they'll create events for you in Google Analytics 4 that you can turn on and off. So that's nice. 3 things I don't love about it is that it is still kind of clunky, like as far as, trying to find what you want and what you don't necessarily need to see, and kind of fixing that up. There is no integration to Search Console right now, which I really don't like. And the other thing I don't like is just some of the things, some parts of setup are probably more complicated than they need to be. But I feel like that's just with anything that comes along with Google most of the time. Some things are more complicated than they need to be. But alas. All right. So we talked about the differences between the menus. Now, if you look under each of those menus, this is a really big difference here. So under acquisition, we used to have like source or not, that's audience. We used to have like traffic, so the different sources, right? Here we have acquisition, and it's split up to users versus traffic, which I found very interesting. But it makes sense, if you have multiple users that come back over and over again, which is the ideal situation, then maybe they come to you from social media after they know you originally. Maybe they come to you from because they recognize your name in the SERP, or there's so many different ways. But so we have that change is a bit different. One of the biggest changes is when we go into so under engagement, which used to be behavior, we see where behavior metrics used to live. Now we see engagement metrics. So we see engaged sessions, which are any sessions that lasted longer than 10 seconds or had a conversion event, or saw 2 or more screens or page views in a singular session. But we see an engagement rate, which has replaced bounce rate. I know, a moment of silence. This has been a long debated metric. A lot of people have a lot of really big feelings about bounce rates. From what I understand, looking into it, having conversations about it, it's kind of just the opposite of a bounce rate. It's the engagement rate. But I could be wrong about that. I mean, you can compare your own data. Personally, I prefer engagement rate, but to each their own. Let's see. You will see that there are a lot less, like if we look at real time, there's a lot less like actual identifying of users. So real time analytics, or no, audience analytics, we were able to go into, where was it here? Let me see. Where is it? Not user flow. Where did it go? I can't find it. But basically in Universal Analytics, we had User Explorer, which allowed you to like look at, maybe they just got rid of it altogether. I don't think they did, because somebody just asked me about it not too long ago. But basically you were able to look at like, okay, this specific user came to our website for the first time on this day, and then they came back on this day, and these are the pages they looked at and all that stuff. all the privacy stuff going on right now, that has kind of been nixed. Now, in real-time analytics on Google Analytics 4, you can go to user snapshot, and it will show you that for one random user. So like here you can see all of their interactions today. Let's see if we can find somebody who's yeah. So it's kind of the same thing, not near as in depth as I would say the other ones were. And you can see that there is a difference. Tony, thanks for joining. There's a difference in like how you can break down and like filter out traffic in this user explorer. Militia says, yikes, clients who are married to bounce rate are going to throw a fit. Absolutely, yeah. And I don't think it's just clients, I think it's marketers. Now, it's not to say that it's never going to show back up and that Google isn't going to get a bunch of backlash and bring it back. Personally, I don't think they will, but you never know. You never know. So, that's another big change is that you don't get the user explorer, which for some reason I'm totally blanking on where that used to be. I have no idea. I thought it was under audience, but perhaps not. You also don't get like the interests as far as like in market, what do they have here? In market affinity, all that stuff is gone in Google Analytics 4, which personally I think is fine because the numbers were so wonky. Anyways, you didn't really get a ton of like really beneficial information, but so yeah, I know that they really wanted to simplify these menus, and I think they did an okay job, but it is still pretty confusing for people just because it is so different. But like I said, the good thing is that you can, so this is a big difference, I mean, because you could kind of do it in Universal Analytics, but one of the bigger differences in Google Analytics 4 is that when you come to a view like this, right? So when you come to a report, so we're looking at the user acquisition report, you can actually, okay, so this, I don't know this. Let me pull in an account here where I can make changes. You can actually, where this little pencil is, if you click the pencil, you can actually change and customize all of these reports to only include the information that you want them to. You can change the way it looks as far as like what kind of charts you have, and all of that fun stuff, which is really nice. And you can save it and it'll stay there forever and ever, amen, which is very nice. You can also create libraries of reports. That's a bit much to go over right at this second, but that's another big difference. And then if we go to this explorations, so if you go to, let me get out of this account real quick so we actually have data to work with. So if we look at explorations, you're able to create, so got all of this. So it kind of looks like, I always say it looks like Google Data Studio and custom reports from Universal Analytics, which is right here. You go to customization, you can create custom reports or dashboards, custom dashboards. So it kind of has like this feel where it's like you can pull all of the metrics you want into a single report that you can look at, you know, whenever or send on a specific schedule. But like way more advanced, and it looks kind of and works kind of like Google Data Studio, except for you're only using information that's in Google Analytics 4, and you get access to anomaly detection, which is, you know, again, using their machine learning and using it completely for free. And you get access to predictive metrics. So with this view, I can't use them, but people that are likely to churn, people that are likely to purchase, you get access to all of that information in explorations as well. So really, I mean, you're tapping into what, generally speaking, is a very expensive technology, and you get it actually absolutely for free. And it tells you if something is statistically significant, so you don't have to run any sort of, tests or anything like that. It just tells you, hey, this is significantly, statistically significant. You can change the sensitivity. So I have really low sensitivity here or really high sensitivity, and it'll show you, and this is just, I believe, changing the p-value, but I'm not a statistician, so I don't really know. You can also determine how long you wanted the training period to be, all that kind of fun stuff. So, and all this is done right here in Google Analytics 4. So you don't have to leave and go to Data Studio. If there's something specifically that you want to see, and you only want to see it once, or like you don't want to create it as something that lives in your Google Analytics 4 view, you can do it right here. You can also create segments that you only use once here. So we have predictive. So here, if we do predictive 7-day purchasers, I'm going to put save, and you'll see it's going to change this up for me here. Maybe it'll go through. Yeah. So we can see that the majority of likely 7-day purchasers are coming from the US. Or India, right? And we can see where that anomaly, where those anomalies happen. So, and all this is saved right here. You can share it. So I can't share this one because I don't own this. This is just the demo account. You can share it either in you can share it to people who have access to Google Analytics, like that property, or you can download it and share it as like a PDF. They do, I'm not sure, I hope they change this at some point. It's kind of like an Excel workbook where it's like a workbook and you can only have like one visualization per tab, which is strange, but alas. So, but yeah, really, those are kind of the biggest differences between Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics. You have the data streams and how like each property works. So as opposed to having different properties for each digital entity you own, you can push data from multiple digital entities into one property using data streams. 2, the setup is a lot easier. You don't really need a developer as much with Google Analytics 4. 3, I would make sure, this is just a piece of advice, but making sure that you're running both Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics at the same time, because eventually you'll only have Google Analytics 4 to work with. But currently, Google Analytics 4 doesn't have all the same functionalities as Universal Analytics. In Google Analytics 4, you get a lot more customization. So you get to customize all of your reports and everything of that nature, and your events and conversions. But you don't really necessarily get, you do get that option in Universal Analytics. It's a much bigger pain in the butt. However, in Google Analytics 4, you don't get a lot of like the nitty-gritty user details. It's all pretty randomized. You don't get like in-market or affiliate information, or affiliation, information. A lot of that has to do with data security and privacy. In Google Analytics 4, you see a lot more machine learning. You get access to it in pretty big ways. Throughout your reports, you'll see it, but specifically using explorations. Obviously, explorations is only a Google Analytics 4 thing. Universal Analytics had custom reports and dashboards, which were helpful and nice, but they have nowhere near the functionality of explorations. And the menus are completely different, but the majority of the like dimensions and metrics stay the same, with the exception of those behavior analytics turning over to engagement analytics. So if you have any specific questions about um, either platform, Universal Analytics or um, so either Universal Analytics or Google Analytics 4, now is the time to ask. And while we are doing that, while I'm waiting for some of those questions to come in, I do want to remind you that the marketing merch store is open. Right now we have the two t-shirts. So we have the social media marketing t-shirt, which is based off the Santa Cruz dot logo. Oh, and then we have the Analytics Master t-shirt, which is based off the classic Thrasher magazine. And then we have some stickers here. So we'd love to see you guys over there. And yeah, I'm not really seeing any more comments or questions come in. But if you're watching this as a replay, go ahead, throw a comment in if you have any questions, and I'll make sure to come back and answer those. But for now, friends, that is all I have this Analytics Friday. Make sure you are subscribed, following, whatever, so that you can catch me next Friday when I go live. And let me know if you have a topic you want me to cover, because I would love to do that. But that's all for this week, folks. Don't forget, you're a beast.